On the internet, I am Sata Prescott on Facebook pages and whatnot. I am IRL, a librarian at Northern Illinois University, working with special collections and digital projects. So I do have some foundation from which to help you with questions about research in the World Wide Web. So hopefully that is helpful to you. All right, so what is digital research? Why is it different from just regular research? Is it different from regular research? It is in your approach, but your net result is still the same level of worthwhile if you go about digital research with the same kind of ethics and attention to authority, detail, and validity. Some of the pitfalls of digital research are it is sometimes much harder to keep your work organized and retrievable. Uses a very different skill set. So if you feel super comfortable diving into a library, you might not feel totally prepared for working with online linked data and all that fun stuff. And digital research is a lot more collaborative, and you're more dependent upon other humans' work to be able to get the information you need. And you need just a very different foundational start point. But I do want to emphasize that just because you found it on the internet, that doesn't mean that your research is lazy necessarily. I know that in the like hardcore academic circles, some of the old fogies are like, well, you just looked it up online. Well, no, that's still research. It still matters. So I'm going to give you a brief outline. First, we're going to talk about what exists online. We're going to talk about what the actual process you go through. And this is from my library land, the seeking, identifying, reviewing what you found, and verifying that it's actually the thing. We're going to talk about how to actually talk to the internet, that it will be usable for you. A few of the platforms you might encounter, how to discriminate between resources and which ones are good resources and which ones are bad resources. A brief overview of some organizational tools, and then we're going to have some fun practice. So, what is on the internet? Things that you are likely to be able to actually access online are peer-reviewed scholarly articles. Those are almost always digitally available, especially the ones that have been written post-1970. You can find an awful lot of digitally scanned objects. That scans for preservation, so it tries to emulate what the actual thing looks like, as well as scans for readability. So these will often be like black and white copies of books that you can read, but they don't look like, they don't have the brown crinkling on the edges of the paper. But you can find finding aids. These are tools that particularly libraries, special collections, and museums put together to explain what is in their collection. Sometimes you need to like prepare ahead of time before you go visit a physical collection, and you can do that preparatory work online. You can find scholar and institution contact information, because you're going to be, literally calling people to say, all right, what's in that third box? Can you just go look in that third box and tell me what's in it? And usually they'll be really happy to do so. You can also find authors of certain papers that you're interested in, and you can write them and say, your paper is $60 to download from this website. Do you think you could just like mail it to me? And a lot of scholars will say, yes, absolutely, sure. Or maybe they'll say, I can't give you the published version, but do you want the one with the typo left in? So you can find a ton of secondary resources, books that are free to read, especially given our period. Everything before 1923 is considered out of copyright in any consideration whatsoever. So yeah, if you can find it, it's free to read and use. But you can also find an awful lot of what I'll call amateur work and outright nonsense, which I'm sure you've already encountered before, so I'll not belabor the point. So things that are more difficult to find are complete collections. So you might find a page from this illuminated manuscript where they've scanned like the prettiest picture in it and not actually any of the text. Complete metadata. Metadata is the so-called data about data. The when was this scanned? What date is it from? So you may be able to find this really cool resource and not a lot of information about it. Sometimes you can't find the preservation quality scans or the readability scans. Like maybe you need one or the other. Sometimes you can find the one thing, but nothing that connects it to anything else. One of the big losses about doing digital research is that since you're not just combing through backwoods archives, somebody else has touched this. Somebody else has taken the time to put it on the internet. So you don't have as much opportunity for new discoveries. That doesn't mean you can't still do good research. It's just, it's already had human hands on it. And lastly, there's a lot of great information online that is behind a paywall. And we'll talk a little bit about how to get around some of those. And if anything is confusing or you want me to answer a question, just hit me up in the chat and I'll see that little orange blink and I'll try and get to it. All right, so the process of finding the thing, it helps to go about seeking and finding with sort of an organized process that you have in your brain. Oh, I'm already seeing chats. Chatty chat. Chat, chat, chat. Oh yeah, professors totally give away their work. So sometimes it'll be like, could you pay shipping? Or could you send me $10? Or I've had one professor who has given me their work on the promise that I send them my work after the fact so they could collect the citations. So yeah, definitely a thing that gets done. All right. So when we are, oh, yes, I thought so too. All right. Organizing how you go about things. Sometimes it's fun to just go to Google, search a thing, open up 10 million tabs, and then 2 days later, get too frustrated, close it all, and start over. Instead, formulate your question. What are you trying to find? Get specific. Write it down in a notepad if you need to. Then your next step is identifying objects that might be useful. This would be your digital equivalent to picking up 10 books off the shelf and saying, these look like they might have relevance. Then you review the items you've pulled, and then you verify the items as being correct. So does that process kind of make some sense to people? All right. Come on. Come on. Yeah, there we go. So how do you talk to the internet? The first thing I want you to know is computers are dumb. They are very clever. They are very impressive, but they don't understand anything that you don't tell it to understand. So that being said, you have to be able to parse your statements into a way that a computer can understand. A computer can understand 17th century Italian illumination, but it can't understand drawings of flowers with gold leaf and purple, because then you're just going to get leaves and purple things. Does that make some sense? So when you're thinking in terms of computers like having a big, broad topic that gets narrowed and narrowed and narrowed. So if you're looking for illuminations that contain unicorns, I suppose. You might start with the word illumination and then unicorn. Um, you would not necessarily do unicorn illuminations. Does that make sense? Medieval Illuminations unicorn will end up with probably illuminated manuscripts that contain unicorns. Unicorns illumination will probably end up with glowing unicorns. So think about big topic and bringing it down to narrower terms. The best thing you can do for search engines is to be as specific as possible. Instead of thinking about how you would describe your topic to a human, just get really narrow in your terminology. So again, with the unicorns, you might really want to say 1200s medieval illuminations unicorns to really like hone it in. That'll help a lot with your searching. And lastly, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Boolean operations. Ye old Google has largely discarded Boolean language these days, but for all of your other search engines, you'll still want to be aware of these. So forgive me if I'm going over stuff you already know, but I got to put it out there. So your operators are and, not, or, quotation marks, and asterisk. There are a few more, but these are the easiest ones. If you put and between some words, your results will have both of those words show up in them. If you put not in between two words, you will have results that have the first word and not the second word. If you put or between two words, you will get all the results that have one or the other. If you put quotations around phrases, it will have the whole phrase or the whole word. Oh, so I got a question in the chat of what search engine do you recommend? So for searching the entirety of the internet, Google's your best bet now. But these operations operate inside all web pages and all library catalogs and everywhere else you might go on the internet. Does that make sense? So, and the last Boolean operator, we'll do some examples in just a little bit, so you'll see what I'm saying. But the last Boolean operator I wanted to mention was the asterisk. You might know there's two generally accepted ways to spell medieval. So to get both of them, you can put that asterisk where the E or the EA goes, and you'll get both spellings. You'll also get any misspellings that include really random things in that spot. All right, so let's talk about Google. Some people call the ability to effectively use the Google search engine Google Foo, and I find that charming. The way Google operates is instead of looking through everything that exists, which would take a very long time, it operates based on an algorithm that looks at what results have the most number of direct connections to it. That is to say, if Bob looked up alchemy and, oh yes, and plus is and minus is not. Yep, frequently. So it'll depend on what site you're looking at. All right, so the algorithm in Google. If 6 web pages connect to one resource and only one web page connects to a different resource, Google will care more about the page that has 6 things connecting to it. So it will rank that higher than the rest of the results. So you're not necessarily getting things that have the most number of occurrences of the phrase you're looking for, but it's looking for what more people have found to be useful with that phrase. So that is how Google is presenting information to you. Google also incorporates everything it knows about you into your results. This is well known in political circles, for instance. If you search for a political topic, you're more likely to be offered news services that you are more likely to agree with, because that's just how it's ranked based on your search histories. In terms of history investigation, this means that if you have looked at a whole lot of bad news and bad conspiracy websites, you're not going to get great results from Google when you search for history. If you spend all of your time on your library catalog and National Geographic and NASA, you'll get better results. So this is why Google is not necessarily your best stop shop for your starting point for research. Some good things that you might think about for Google is using it for reverse image searching. This is a powerful tool where if you find that cool manuscript page but you have no idea what it is, you can throw it in the reverse image search and sometimes get a useful hit to try and track it back. And the last thing that I really wanted to mention about Google is that Google is a company that generates dollars by advertising results to you. So be aware that there are ads in your search results. Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff. JSTOR is a well-known and well-regarded repository of peer-reviewed resources for the humanities. And in the chat, Rosie de Broek has mentioned you can do some really sophisticated searching through Google. You can, in fact, like one of the things that I'll do is exclude all Pinterest results from Google, because Pinterest is the devil and will and I hate it and I wish it would burn to the ground. Yes, this is being recorded. I should be calmer. All right. So JSTOR is an awesome place to start. And it's particularly great because it allows me to show you some good ways to thank you for agreeing with me on Pinterest. It allows me to show you some good ways to go about searching within a particular website's searching repository. Okay? So we're going to move from my shiny little presentation over to my JSTOR page. Okay. Hopefully you all can see that. Can you? Okay? Awesome. All right, so I have opened up JSTOR, and my JSTOR is serviced via my usage of Northern Illinois University. So that'll allow me to see things that my university has subscriptions to. But even if you have nothing that would allow you a larger subscription base, JSTOR has a lot of open access on it. That meaning that you don't have to pay. Yes, thank you. Thank you for throwing that in there. The chat is a very good resource. I highly recommend you copy pasta that into a notepad. All right, so because I want to search for alchemy, throw that in there. And what I really want to bring your attention to is the refine results area right here. I don't know, can you see when I highlight a thing? Okay. So under refine results, I can either search, let's say, Italian, if I want to look at specifically Italian alchemy. I can also narrow it down to whether it's journals or book chapters. I can look for images particularly. I can search within a particular span of publication dates. Let's say I only want 20th century stuff. Boom. Diddly-dee. So now I only have results that are within this date range. I can also select from a number of attached subject areas, like history. So now I only will have 20th century written materials that are tagged as being about history with the keyword alchemy. And up here in the top level, it'll tell you all the filters you've put on, essentially. And I can say, oh, I've messed up. I didn't mean history, and take that away. So that is how dynamic searching can serve you in individual repositories. Is everyone still pretty much in good shape? Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to bring you back over to share. All right, do you see the presentation again? All right, cool. All right, I did want to mention that JSTOR, again, does have a lot of for-pay material. And yes, there is a way to know what's on JSTOR that's free. In that search results, you can actually set it to only show me stuff that I can access based on how I've signed in. So down at the bottom of those facets, it'll list access type, and you can switch between all content and content I can access. And you'd be surprised what you might have access to based on your various associations. Like if you're a veteran or you have any university affiliation, some public libraries have more JSTOR access and you can sign in via that. If you are a medical personnel, just look around and see what all you've got laying about and how you might be able to get some extra materials. So and the last thing I want to mention is while most of what's in JSTOR is pretty high quality peer-reviewed material, there are still some things that are technically peer-reviewed that are crackpotty. You know, nutbags get together and publish things, and that's a group of peers. So just because you find it on JSTOR doesn't mean it is good stuff. Use your good sense and read up. All right. Next, I want to bring you over to WorldCat. WorldCat is a huge database that connects the catalogs of thousands and thousands of institutions. Oh God, I could go on forever. Its primary usage is to be able to see what libraries or other repositories have the item you're looking for, and to steer you to how to get it through usually interlibrary loan and sometimes through like digital instant access. One of the other cool things about it is if you are using a whole bunch of books in your research, you can make a list of those books in WorldCat and then just print off your citations in the format of your choice. It's beautiful. It's very simple. It too has a very strong facets refining section. I was going to go through and show you some specific things, but given that we had some of our time taken away from us, I think it looks pretty much the same as the JSTOR scenario, so I'll move on with that. The only issues with WorldCat is not everybody is on WorldCat yet, but eventually their distinctiveness will be added to its own. And not every catalog is up to date. Like in my job, what I do is I catalog a bunch of special collections items so that anyone can find them. They've been in our library since ever. I don't even know how long they've been in, but nobody knows they're there until they're added to the catalog. All right. And the last major platform that I want to tell you about is the Internet Archive, particularly Project Gutenberg, which is a large repository for things that are no longer in copyright. And this is where you can find so much early print media. from the 1400s through the 1800s, they have a phenomenal amount of scanned material that is generally text searchable, and is just great for finding the writings of your period in an era especially called incunabula, which is a very good special collections vocabulary word meaning early print media with printing press materials. You can also find things like free documentaries, radio plays. You can find video games, though that's not really applicable for our purposes typically. Still fun stuff. And one of the best parts of the Internet Archive is the Wayback Machine. Is anyone familiar with the Wayback Machine? Okay, then I won't belabor the point since everyone I can see nodded their heads. It seems pretty sensible. But, and there's a thumbs up too. Nice. The only real drawbacks about the Internet Archive is that it's huge and uncurated, and different people contribute to it with different standards. You used to work for the Internet Archive? Holy moly! That's cool. We are going to be friends. Yes, it is a rabbit hole for sure, skis. So, okay, and then we're going to talk about those individual collection pages. These are honestly your best research opportunities. It's just finding what collection has what. Most collections will have some kind of search capacity, will have some kind of search refinement, and will have some kind of searchable metadata. These will tend to be your most trustworthy options, but they will also have a higher bar to understand how to use their system. They'll also rarely be the complete representation of what is there. You'll usually need to work with both the catalog from the institution and the digital collections open at the same time. One of the best practices is to search for a representative object that you can see through scans or photography, and then search the catalog to see what else they have like it. Do your initial research with the scans, and then make plans, if desired, to request more from that collection. Universities and museums will often do at request scanning and will develop their plans for what to put online next based on requests. So do not be afraid to write in and say, I see you have this thing in your catalog. I really wish I could see it. Could you scan it for me? And they'll usually write back with, that'll be $12, please, or sure. My institution so far doesn't have a way to take payment, so everything we do is free. So, all right, now we're going to talk about bad stuff. I don't know how I feel about Scholar Google. It's fine, but it's not very intuitive. I got opinions about it, and I don't like its site backs. All right, has anyone ever heard of the CRAP test? So the CRAP test is a clever little initialism about evaluating your resources. So when you're looking at this was initially put out during the 2016 U.S. election for what I hope is obvious reasons. And it's a series of questions to ask about a thing you're looking at. Is it current? Is it reliable? Who is the authority being investigated? And what is the purpose of the item? So, here's how we can look at internet resources. First, we can look at where is it coming from? in a URL. The top level domain is the term given for the usually 3 letters, but variable after the URL word you're used to seeing. Some of these are limited to specific types of institutions, and some are not. Like a .com was originally for people who wish to make money. A .org used to be only for nonprofits, but now anybody can have one. Yeah, you can totes have a copy. Um, so currently, the best top level domains to look for are .govs because only a government can have it, and .edu because only an educational institution can have it. If your URL's got a .gov or a .edu, you know it's a real one and not a spam site. Conversely, as of current statistics, .science and .stream are the #1 spam sites. So don't just trust a thing that has .science in it, sadly. The next thing to think about is, why does this website exist and how do they make their money? If it's a university website, they probably don't have ads because they're probably paid for by the university's budget. If it has a bunch of ads, maybe they want people to look at it more, so maybe they'll post more sensational stuff. Um, do they get subscriptions? Is their main goal to be entertainment? These are the kinds of questions you can ask about what you're looking at. One of the sneakiest things that, for instance, the History Channel does when presenting big old bunny ears there, documentaries, is they'll say, and here's Dr. So-and-so, who's an expert. Well, what are they a doctor of exactly? Are they a doctor of Egyptology, or are they a doctor of kinesthesiology and just think the pyramids are there for electricity? I'm sorry, I have a bone to pick with the History Channel too, it seems like. Um, so does the thing you're looking at cite other sources? Does it do so by actually putting the text of the sources on the page, or does it have a lot of links? When you click on those links, does it take you to a real place? And does the link just go to a dead end or a meaningless batch of information? Some articles will just link words that don't matter and don't go to real things to make it look like they're citing sources. And for Scadians, I highly recommend that you seek out ancient Scadian research. A lot of people who played way back in the day did good research and put it on the then burgeoning internet and have since left the game. Oh, yes. Yes. You know what? I didn't specifically call out academia.edu, but they are evil and I hate them. They are a for-profit junk place. Don't, just don't go. Just don't go. Is bad. um, oh, Scadians. Yes. So there you'll find a whole lot of websites if you search for Viking apron dress instructions SCA that are on these rickety old web pages that are barely held together with gum and frames in basic HTML, but the info is good and it's tailored for our purposes. In doing heraldic research, I keep referring back to pages that are now only stored in the Wayback Machine, but were Scadian heraldic pages. So definitely don't discount pages that are ugly when they are explicitly for us. So there's actually some beautiful stories recently about ye old Scadian web pages being retooled recently. I'm thinking particularly of Master E's recent retool of Anthony Bryant's Japanese website for how to do Japanese in the SCA. that was started in the early 90s. And then I believe Anthony Bryant died several years ago. And Master E has since been able to keep the website going in a usable fashion. So, it's just beautiful. Okay, this is where I should have put the don't go to academia.edu. So I wanted to mention some pitfalls that tend to happen in digital researching. The first being, I hate Pinterest. I hate academia.edu. Part of the problems with websites like these is that they are interested in serving you things that are shiny and fun, but not interested in keeping a good track of where the shiny things come from, allowing you to track back to what it is and being able to research it more in depth. When you are searching for things and you want to ever get back to them, you need to get the stable URL. I'm going to bring you guys back over to my JSTOR results. Come on, come on. If I can. Thank you. All right, everyone can see the JSTOR page now?
Nope.
No? How about if I actually hit the share button? Can you see it now? Cool. All right. So if I just click on a random journal article, and it thinks about letting me see it, maybe. Okay. So here, if I were to go up to the URL and copy that or bookmark that and try to get back to this article, I would never find it again. This is what's called a temporary URL that finds things based on searches. So what you're going to look for on JSTOR lives right here on the left-hand side. Different repositories will have different locations for this. Maybe they'll say link to this item, or maybe this cite this item button will give you the stable URL. But the stable URL is where the actual thing lives and where the repository has promised that that thing will stay put. You might also see this called a DOI as the specific location of that object. So that's what you want, not just what's in the URL bar. All right, bringing you back to my presentation. Do you see it? Cool. All right, other pitfalls. Then this is just regular research pitfall. If you don't read widely enough, if you end up in a topic that is hotly contested and you read like 3 things that all confirm each other, you might really think that's the way to go when you don't realize that it's a deeply contested topic. Like one of the hot topics right now is Joan of Arc being a transgender individual. So some historical materials will refer to that person as dressing in male clothing just to be able to be in the army and get a thing done. Others will see Joan of Arc as a gender diverse icon. Both of these might have valuable information, and both might be relatively trustworthy materials, but they have very different points, and you might be clouding yourself from the breadth of scholarship if you don't read enough material. I have a wonderful story to tell you about. Reading old materials with your modern brains can lead to some pitfalls. Recently, Naomi Wolf published a book called it's one word, and it means something that's ridiculous and shouldn't be done. Outrageous is what it was called. There we go. And it was about gay men in Victorian England, and the whole point of her book is, oh my God, all of these gay men were killed by the state because of the horrible practices of Victorian law. And she based this on the fact that she had all these transcripts from trials in which people were convicted of sodomy, and then the sentence was labeled death recorded. So she took this to mean that they were executed. But that is a legal term that means we record the information about the proper punishment that's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be, punishable by death. But we're just going to record that we thought about it and not actually do it. So none of these people were actually killed. She wrote this whole freaking book and never thought to ask a British legal scholar, what does this term mean? So be careful in reading what seems to be perfectly clear English. There's an incredible video of her doing an interview where the interviewer asks her about this and she realizes on camera her error. It was tough. Oh God. So the last thing that I really want to mention is, because we, have biases, it might be useful when you're starting out on a research project to go ahead and do some implicit bias tests to see where your biases are. There are a lot of these available through the Implicit Bias Project through Harvard, and I've provided a link there. So while it's not going to just be like, oh, you're racist, it will give you a sense of what you sometimes miss and fail to think about when framing your research questions. All right, now we're going to do something fun. I would love to see those, because I used to do work on 1700s wills in Virginia for conservation work, and those were a trip. All right, we're going to do a test. We're going to do a test, and I'm absolutely confident that you will do just fine. Yes, I agree with Rosie very much that Wikipedia is a perfectly acceptable jump-off point. But the mantra of Wikipedia bad is not necessarily called for. All right, we're going to try to get you to see 2 pages at once. This might be exciting. All right, screen 1, share. All right, can you see both of these? All right, I'll take that one head waggle as gospel. All right, so these are 2 pages that I found by searching for alchemy. Now, it might be really obvious which one is supposed to be the good one and which one is supposed to be the bad one, but let's try and investigate it beyond just aesthetics. So, I want you to think about which of these 2 is older, which is more authoritative, which has a financial stake in your engagement with it, which is more complete, and be thinking on what complete means, and which has clear citations. So, and then I want you to try and figure out whether the image on the left or the right is more useful to an investigation of medieval alchemy. Okay? So we're going to start with, whoop, don't you mind my Discord stream behind me? Okay. So here is the alchemy website on levity.com. When looking for a date, the only date I find is 1996. That seems to match what I'm looking at in terms of aesthetics. It it suggests that it has 150 megabytes online of information. So that seems large, I suppose, for 1996. And over here, it has some alchemical artwork with no real sense of where these pictures might come from. Um, I I guess this one in the top left looks kind of like a tarot card, maybe. So there's that. Then we'll get over here with Bibliotheca Philadelphiensis at bibliophily.pascal.org. So it's not a .edu. It looks a little shiny, a little bit more modern. It's got a 2018 and a 2020 copyright down here. And when I look at something with slow things, come on, slow things. Very slow. It's very image heavy, and my computer doesn't love me anymore. All right. This has a subtitle with citing information below the image. The quality of the images include what I'll go ahead and tell you is called archival borders, the point of which, that's this black space around the object. It's to let you know that you're seeing the whole freaking object and not just the cutout that we want to look at. So if you were to take a quick guess, which of these do you think is the more reputable resource? Philly. Yes. Excellent. All right. What leads you to that conclusion? Just one or two ideas is fine. Just want to make sure that you have some sense. Citations. Woo! Copies, copyright information. Yes. Good. The first one looks like somebody who believes in alchemy in 1996, but we can't just, discriminate based on people's belief systems, if I must be chastising. So, but yes, you definitely want to target for something that even when they're looking at, good, somebody mentions who are they funded by. And yes, Basil, the point of view is an important thing to make note of. I do agree there. So, seems that we are all in great shape. So, I'm gonna take us back to the presentation. We still good? Okay. And though I didn't quite get to it, the image on the left and the image on the right, does anyone have an opinion about either of those? I didn't quite do a good enough job necessarily. I'm not going to try and share back. Oh. Okay, Xian, what would you like to say? And if it's easier, you can even bust on your mic. I don't mind.
Well, as you said earlier, you can see the whole image, and I can kind of see the outline on the one on the right. So to me, that's like, oh, well, that looks more accurate.
That's a good thing to look for. This one doesn't actually do archival borders. The actual difference between the two is that the one on the left was on the previous page, on page number 1, and it didn't have any citing information. And you know what? I actually didn't scroll down enough for you guys to see image number 2 on the first one. So I tricked you. I'm sorry. I'm a terrible human being. But the image on the left is actually an album cover from Smashing Pumpkins. and it is modern artwork. And on page number 1, in the alchemical artwork section, there is no distinction between modern works and historical works. So, beware the unsighted images. Okay, we're getting toward the end. Don't you worry. We're going to talk now about how to organize your research. So, things that do not tend to really work well. Bookmarking. Bookmarking is good for the higher levels of the domain, but specific individual pages will get moved, they'll get updated. That's why you want that stable URL. Pinterest. Pinterest divides their images from the metadata depending on the settings of the individual's accounts who save the pictures they like. So you can't go by Pinterest for research. If you want to find cute cakes, Pinterest. You want to craft with fall leaves, Pinterest. You want to make a Roman dress, stola, not Pinterest. Copying and pasting images into documents. Like I've seen some people use like Google Docs and they'll copy and paste images into it. If you're wanting those images to still look good or be useful, like if you're trying to get seams on garments, don't copy and paste them into a document. That will automatically resize the pixels and you'll lose the pixel images. Yes, exactly. Download the whole image. In a lot of repositories and library collections, you can do what's called download the original TIFF or download large image, and you can get the biggest, baddest picture possible. Same problem with screen captures. Screen capture is great for showing people how to use software and websites, but it captures at 72 dpi and is not useful for looking at the seam stitching on this particular Renaissance painting. And printouts, especially researchers who are used to dead tree research, they'll often do printouts, and that's good in the sense that the text will not run away if you print it out, but it's messy. Eventually you're going to get tired of it and you're going to chuck it or burn it, and then you'll be regretful. And it still actually loses metadata, like ways that you could quickly cite materials, or your cat will throw up on it. Oh, the things my cats have thrown up on. All right, so here's good ways to deal with all your research. So Google Drive and the Google Suite are very useful for organization, not for copying and pasting photos into, but for saving and storing photos, sure. And it's free, you have a lot of space, great, use it. Cloud storage, yay. Do not necessarily put the only copy of your grand opus in Google storage. Have a physical backup for those. Many websites have those built-in tools, like I mentioned for WorldCat. You can save a list of books you're using. In JSTOR, you can save a shelf, what's called a shelf of materials. In most local library collections, you can have a particular view of everything you've checked out. I do want to make a particular mention of the software Zotero. This is a free researcher's assistant software that allows you to instantly store materials, be it from web page or from physical. It's great for jostling or jumping between both formats. It allows you to like highlight a paragraph on a website and just click the little Zotero button and say, just store this for me, please. And then Zotero will say, okay, I'll store this paragraph and I'll store the URL and I'll tell you what date you accessed it and all that. All right. There are other note-taking softwares. Evernote is very popular. You can use spreadsheets, like just general spreadsheets, to log your citations. I have a lot of friends who get very excited about organizing their spreadsheets. So, and lastly, like we talked about stable URLs, but also download the materials. Keep the real materials. So yes. So find your good system. They exist, but don't just bookmark a bunch of stuff and hope. Don't try and just keep it in your head. Your head is a squishy meat packet, and it will fail you. All of these in the chat, these are all good options. So yes. So we have about 23 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to do some work. We are going to do a project. We are going to together pick a topic, and you guys are going to find 2 primary sources, 3 peer-reviewed sources, and 1 bad source that you would otherwise disregard. All right. So, any votes on our topic? It can't be alchemy, because that's what I looked up. Parrots. All right. Well, my friends, I do believe we are all going to look up parrots in period. So please take 5 minutes to find 2 primary resources, 3 peer-reviewed resources, and 1 very bad resource. If you don't want to play, that's okay. I won't come after you, but I hope you will, and I'm going to be hunting too. So, on your mark, get set, go. All right. By my clock, I think it has been 5 minutes. So, how about we have some audio time if people are interested, and we can talk about some of our results and what we find. And there's some good posts happening in chat as well. I see some archive.org. Oh, bestiary. That sounds like fun. Oh, heck yeah. Now, what do we know about bestiary.ca? Seems to be an independent website, perhaps. Contact. This site is owned and maintained by David Badka in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. So it seems to be an independent, potentially amateur historian. And there's an email that you could contact to see if you can find out more about the individual. However, this person doesn't seem to be backed by an institution of any kind. I'm very sorry, Katrin. You and your parity lusts will have to be satiated elsewhere. I did, however, find information about courtesans in period in India having to do with parrots. Oh no! Now, wait a minute, Rosa. What do you think might be up with that URL you've shared? Yep. Oh, awesome. Somebody found some SCA peeps. All right. It looks like everybody is doing really well. I'm very glad to have gotten to look up parrots with you folks. All right. We've got about 15 minutes now. If anyone would like to just yammer about research or have any specific questions, I am at your disposal as your helpful Scadian librarian.
I am curious what it was that you found on academia.edu that has so scarred you from that. I am finding a lot of people who are uploading their master's theses, their doctoral dissertations,
yeah.
and that kind of stuff. I do occasionally find stuff that is, what on earth is it doing here, kind of thing. So I'm
So the
curious what
problem with
field you were researching and that
academia.edu
you found
isn't
the frightening stuff.
necessarily. It's not that it's frightening. In fact, yes, a lot of the material is perfectly wonderful. The problem is that the hosting service is a for-profit predatory service that attempts to acquire as much stuff as possible without any kind of there's no peer review. Anyone can write anything and post it on there. And a lot of things that are posted on there count as being published, and so prevent, for instance, younger people who are less knowledgeable from being able to publish that material in a reputable resource later. Furthermore, they put a lot of stuff behind paywall that isn't actually isn't in a journal that would otherwise have a paywall. Oh, I saw a raised hand. I don't know how to deal with a raised hand. Can you speak?
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just waiting my turn. So if you want to finish answering that question, that's fine.
I've pretty much said my piece. It's not about the materials on it, it's the site itself and its bad practices.
So
All
my
right.
question
So
was if you if
I
you're
lost you. I think I
you
lost
touched
you.
on it briefly, but if you're dealing with the work
Oh dear. Give that one more try. I didn't hear you. You said I touched on it briefly, but. Argent, are you here?
I am. I got here right after work, so I missed pretty much all of it. I got here right when you started the homework. But hi. Oh, are you able to hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you.
I was gonna say I can also hear you.
Okay, because it gave me a notification saying Sada would like you to unmute your mic.
Sada, are you still there?
Well, now Sada's on mute.
Uh-oh. I was about to say I can hear everybody else but Sada.
Yeah, Sada's
Hello.
currently showing.
I am
There.
here. There we are.
There we go.
So I'm very sorry I was not able to hear that audio question. Throw it in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Rose. If you're dealing with works in other languages, especially non-European languages, what are some good tips for that? So some things you can do are try and find it in a multilingual library and see if they have standardized translations. The Library of Congress has some transliteration guides for how to deal with materials and transliterating it into a useful typable thing. If you know what the content is, or if you Arabic and Islamic stuff, find a friend who speaks it. That's that's all you can really do. Yeah. Mongolian is becoming cooler though, with all of the various bands that are coming over. So you're going to start having more access points with Mongolian stuff. So look forward to that. Italian is easy. Don't even. You can just throw Renaissance Italian into a translator and be fine. Any of the Romance languages, don't even me. Czech is a little bit harder, but you know, machine translating gets you kind of there. And luckily, Norwegian and Danish, it's pretty easy to find helpful groups with multilingual people who also speak English, because they all speak English. So those are my best options: is find a community that speaks it, use the Library of Congress transliteration guides, and try and find it in a multilingual repository. So, does that help at all? Yeah, the machine translating is rough for anything that isn't a Romance language.
The other thing that I would put in, depending on how intensely you're looking into this, like if this is going to be the bulk of your research for years, if that language is popular enough that it's going to be something people might have for graduate school programs, they teach graduate school classes specifically on reading in a language, because the
Yes.
main purpose for graduate school is to use it for reading. And so those programs are more intensive on helping you understand the grammar and the construction. With, if you understand that, then with a dictionary for the language, you can get through things, because obviously easier than some other things, but I did that in grad school for German, and it's been invaluable to my research on prayer beads, because almost all the resources are German.
So when you're getting into like really noodly dialects as opposed to just the basic content, yeah, you're just going to have to button down and study that dialect. When you're looking at Italian, if you have a foundation in Latin, if you can get access to ecclesiastical Latin, those will help you in your being able to look at medieval Italian. But in the end, sometimes you just got to knuckle down and learn it. Got any other fun things?
David S. Pumpkins is freaking me out.
Oh, my apologies. But I'm glad that somebody knew what he was. Here, I'll run us back to the librarian. Oh.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank everyone very much for coming with me on this entirely too long journey about my nerdy lust for good research. I hope this was useful to anyone. And if nobody has any other questions, I suppose I will free you.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fare thee well, everyone.
I do have a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Hit me with your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to go out while we were doing the parent search, so I couldn't see the last of it. But
No
I do have
worries.
a question before leaving. I am trying to look for documentation on wood burning. I can't
So,
find anything that will take me to the origins. Everywhere I've looked, it says yes, it is. It's ancient, but they don't give me anything that I can work with. And since wood burning, like wood is so perishable, so there's not a lot of evidence. The
Sure.
earliest I've seen is a harp, Queen Mary's harp, that it actually has. And I actually contacted the museum where it is, and they did verify that it is pyrography. But
burnt and
outside
not
I
carved.
haven't-
So when you're looking at specific techniques for doing things that are done modernly, yeah, it can sometimes be really hard to separate out the how to do this modernly from actual historical research. One of the
Mhm.
things that helps is to narrow it down initially to a location and time period that you know it did exist, and research that and
Mhm.
try and find direct links into that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like you found your harp, which I assume has a particular period and place associated with it. So you might try finding,
1500s.
okay, so you might be able to find the perhaps manufacturer or artisan of that harp with the museum. Maybe there's a maker's mark or some such on it. From there, you can probably find the shop, and then you can find out if there are any records pertaining to how long that shop existed or where that artisan's teacher was located. Were they an immigrant or were they local? So that is how I would probably approach that kind of question. And also there's a note from the chat. Rosa says that there's a Scadian who's already researching this as well.
Yeah.
So you should probably
Yeah,
hit him
I
up and
already
share your-
contacted him. Yeah, David Hines,
excellent.
I already, yeah. But he's running into the same problem too, because he has found a little bit more. He has like 3 harps, but that's about it. And that's not really enough for the SCA to say, okay, yeah, we accept this as a medieval art.
Really? After 3 harps?
No. Everybody's like looking at us like, wood burning is not really period. I'm like, I can't believe that people think that because we don't have any remains, because it's very, wood
Right.
died.
It's an ephemeral object unless it gets fossilized.
Where are the 3 harps from?
I don't remember where they're from, but one is the one that I told you about. It's Mary's, it's Queen Mary's harp, and he has like 2 other harps, but I don't remember where.
So I've run into something parallel to you. So I do prayer bead research, and after lots and lots of research, the answer is we don't have very much information at all on how the things were done. We only have the finished pieces, which may be where you guys end up too. I guess the question would be, where else might you find other things that show the wood burning? I know in some places, I've run into this in Ireland a lot, they don't have as much money, so they don't get as much of their collection online. Kind of, I would find out through, like, somebody mentioned they saw it when they were on vacation, that a museum would have something, and then I'd have to reach directly out to the museum and say, so I heard you have this, do you have this? Because just because we don't have documentation on how they did it, if you've got 3 harps, well, somebody did it in period, because otherwise where the harps come from. But it's a difficult battle when there's no documentation of the process, but you can do it. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you guys more about it too.
Oh yeah,
because I ran into a similar problem.
That would be awesome.
That's a common problem.
I created a Facebook group for people that are interested in documenting pyrography. If anybody's interested, just look for it. It's medieval. How did I call it? I don't remember. I think it's medieval pyrography documentation or something like that.
All right. So I saw another question. Oh, the handout. I'll make sure that it's accessible on the event page for this class.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Period pyrography documentation. That's
Great.
why.
I put my name in my first last SCA name in the chat. You can find me on the Laurel pages. Yeah, I'm always happy to try to look at things from an interesting way, because I ran into a similar problem with my passion.
Thank you.
Creative ways to get around, and yeah, I can help you guys brainstorm some ideas.
That would be awesome.
Thank you again, and farewell.